Okay, it told me too. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me today. And hello, my name is Shannon. I see a lot of people writing in the chat where they're from. So thank you wherever you're from. And I am in Colorado, so I'm joining from the Rockies. But what I'm going to show you guys today is actually part two. So last month, if you joined us, I taught you guys how to draw a flower bouquet and then how to outline it with Copic multiliner pens. And this month we included a PDF. I think Nate just also put it in the chat of line art. So that was the line art that I finished up that you guys can just print out at home onto some marker paper, and we're just going to color it with Copic today. So we did part one, just drawing last time, and this month is all about coloring with Copic. So with that being said, I think we're ready to get into the overhead view. So awesome. That was quick. Thank you. So yes, and just a reminder again, if you guys do need this file, it is in the chat. Nate put it in there. So here we have right here in front of me on my desk, I have one version that's completely colored already, and then obviously the one that I just printed. So I'll bring this closer just for you guys to take a look at before I start coloring. So I've got some nice greens in the stem of the bouquet. I've got some nice purples and pinks, yellow, blue, and blue-green. So these are the colors that I'll be using today, and this is pretty much what we'll accomplish by the end of this class. And then I'm going to lift up my little swatch card. So right here, all the colors that are underlined at the top, that you can purchase as one set. That's the Copic Ciao pastel set. And so that is my base for today's bouquet. And then the colors listed underneath, if you notice, they're either a little bit darker or a little bit lighter than the colors in that set. I basically just chose these as a complement to bring out some more shades for these colors in the set. So those are the colors that I will be using. And if you're new to Copic, these are alcohol-based markers, so they're very blendable. And they do have a slight odor to them. That's kind of how you know they're an alcohol base. But yeah, they're super blendable, and I will use the Super Brush Nib today with these markers. So what I'm going to start off with is what I think is the easiest flower to color. And just because there's only one layer of petals, and that's this flower right here at the top. So what you can see here is some darker values at the edges, some middle tone, and then a light blue. So I'm going to be using BG18, BG15, and B12. And so those are the colors that I'll be using here, just some 3 blue and blue greens. So I'm going to get started with my darkest color. Whether you guys have these exact colors in front of you or not, just choose the darkest color that you have. And this is a Copic Sketch. I want to try and see if I can get in focus. There we go. Okay, this is the Copic Sketch, and this one comes in 358 colors. So this one has a lot of different color options. But I'm going to use the side here with this gray stripe, and that is the Super Brush Nib. So I'll go ahead and uncap that, set that aside. And I'm going to go from the edge of each petal and flick downward about maybe a 1/4 of an inch, not very far, because we've got 3 colors we're going to use. And I'm also going to flick from the inside of each petal about a 1/4 of an inch. And for the petal shapes that are larger, like these ones at the top, I'm going to add more ink because the shape itself is also larger. So I'm just going to flick in the color. And let me show on a scrap sheet of paper real quick what this looks like. So basically, I'm pressing a little bit harder, and then I'm lifting up my marker as I move up the page. So as you can see here, it's a little bit darker there, and I'm lifting up the marker as I move. So I will just, kind of messed up there, but keep flicking that marker down, and this is my darker color. And I will go from the center and the edges. And then I gotta watch out for these little circles here, because I want to keep those white, the white of the paper. So I'll kind of go around those and then add just a little bit on that petal right there that touches this other one. And I'm just adding a little bit as I go up. Again, kind of outlining and trying to avoid any overlapping with this leaf shape right here. And just moving my hand around the page. And I'm trying to flick in the direction of the petal. So I'm not just going kind of up and down. All I'm trying to do is curve it towards that middle area. So my hand is definitely moving around the page quite a bit. Okay, so there we go. I know this looks a little bit ridiculous right now, but bear with me. We'll bring in our next color, which is going to be our mid-tone color, BG15, and this one in that Copic pastel set is the Ciao. So this is what the Ciao marker looks like. It looks a little bit different. It's shaped like a circle, but it has the same two nibs as the sketch. And it also has this gray stripe on the side that tells you, where the super brush nib is. But the one thing I love the most is that the caps can snap on the other side. I love that about the Ciao. And so what I'm going to do next is take this color and kind of flick it out from inside the BG18. So by going over the BG18 color, I'm reactivating that ink, and I'm like adding another layer of value to it as well by adding this second layer of pigment on top of it. So I'll pause here just a second to bring this closer up. But all I'm doing here, I'm going to get it really close if I can, is I'm going on top of the area with BG18 with this BG15 color, and I'm just bringing it down a little bit further. And I'll do the same thing here, and I'll bring it up, but I still want to have a little bit of white space in the middle because that's where I'll add my third color, my lightest color, B12. So this is a bit repetitive right here. I'm just going to go around the entire flower and layer with BG15 on top of BG18. So with flowers, it's nice because you have all of these petals. It does have a little bit of repetition. However, if you are new to coloring, the repetitive nature of these flowers also really teaches you the techniques well. So I'm just going to keep flicking in the color, making sure I leave a little bit of white space because that's where I'll add my third and final color, the lightest blue. I'll go from up here and keep kind of flicking that color in the direction of the petal. It really helps make it look very organic and natural. And over here where these little ovals are, we just got to be careful with those so we don't accidentally overlay it with this color. And then these last few areas over here. Okay, there we go. So I'll lift this up. So here we've got two different shades of blue-green. We have a blue-green 18 and a blue-green 15. And next I'm going to use a light blue, which for me is going to be B12. And I'm going to add a lot of layers of this to just fill in these areas that I left white right now. And that's going to bring out that lightest area and kind of a little bit of a highlight. So B12. And I'm going to flick kind of from either side, just going back and forth, covering a little bit of the BG15 color. And I'm just trying to saturate this to make sure that everything blends well together. So again, this might take a few layers of this light blue, simply because it is the lightest color, and we really want it to blend well with the other mid-tone. So all you need to do here is just kind of add in a few layers. There we go. And just continue around the entire flower. I'm really saturating in that area with BG15 because I really want to make sure that blends well.
So Shannon, we have a question from Catherine. Catherine wants to know, do you always start with the darker shade, then medium, then lightest? What's your process?
Yeah, so for this particular flower, I did do that. And I think I do most often start with the darker one first. I think that's just a personal preference because you can do either or. I'll lift this up as I'm talking. But I like starting with the darker one because you can really see very quickly how much you can shade it out with that next tone down. Whenever you start light and then go to dark, you always have to go back to your light color to soften it. So I guess in a way, I'd like to work dark to light to kind of save my ink. I feel like I don't have to do as many layers with my light one if I do that. Yeah, so there's a few areas I could layer again with BG15, a few little streaks right in here, but I'm going to go ahead and color in these little ovals in the middle. And for that, I'm going to use the yellows, like in my example over here. So I'm going to use actually a yellow and a pink. So I'm going to use Y21. I'll show my little swatches again. Y21 and RV21. Okay, let's start with RV21. And what I'm going to do is flick from the bottom portion of each of these and go halfway up. That's it. It might just be a few little lines, but I'm going to go about halfway up on each of these little ovals here, oval shapes. I'm literally just adding about 2 lines. So that's it. And then I'm going to take Y21, and this is where it kind of makes that orangish color. And I'm going to color the entire thing. I'm going to overlap that RV21. I'm just kind of going up and down because the shapes are small. And let me lift that up again. There we go. So you can see a little bit of that pink at the bottom. And now it looks more like an orange because I layered it with the yellow. And so I really like how that looks. There's just a little bit of tonality there that changes. So I really like that, how it looks. And I think yellow really stands out next to blue. So that's just my own personal preference. You could have done pink in there or green, but that's what I like to do. And that's one flower. I mean, it looks pretty similar to this one. I know I layered this a few more times. That's why the darks look darker. But essentially for this demo, since I just want to try and get as much done in an hour as possible. But I do want to say the more that you layer, the darker the colors will become. So it will start to look darker and build up more value the more times that you layer it. And next, I'm going to move down to this bigger flower, this more geometric looking one, and kind of follow a similar pattern here using the yellows and the pinks and the purples. So, trying to keep my swatch card there. I'm going to start off with RV21. And I'm going to put that in, I'm trying to point here with my marker, in these areas. So these kind of, not the smallest ones, but the second to smallest ones. And I'm going to flick with my super brush nib about a third of the way up. But this is just personal preference here. You can flick your marker with this darker color higher if you want. But I'm just going to do a little bit at the bottom here. I think that's about a third, maybe a little less. But I'm going to outline that and then flick. This is RV21. And I did just refill this marker earlier today. I've had this pastel set probably since I was 18. So I've had these markers for a while, but the nice thing about Copic is their sustainability and the refills are great. Okay. So there we go. Pretty simple, just about a third of the way up. And just like I did up here, using RV21 and Y21, I'm going to color over the entire area with Y21. And if you notice too, I'm also trying to turn my hand to the shape of the petal, trying to keep in mind the center. So here I'm kind of shading in this direction. Now I'll move my hand and shade up and down. I don't know, I just feel like it looks more natural, especially with flowers, and more organic when you try and color in the direction of the petal. So now I'm turning my hand again, and I'll fill this in. I'm just going up and down, and then I'll flick again, doing 2 layers here. And then I'll go down to this one, coloring over the entire area, really trying to reactivate that pigment underneath with the pink so that it blends seamlessly. And this last one here. Brilliant. Okay. And again, I want you guys to see that. So that is a blend with a pink and a yellow, RV21 and Y21. And I applied the darker color first, and then I went over it 2 times with Y21, just to soften out those blends. And next, I will show V04 and RV21. Oh, I'm kind of covering in this here, but V04 and RV21. So let's grab V04. Again, I'll start with my darker one. And I'm going to go and alternate. So like this coloring over here, I'm using alternation. So I'll go with pink, and then I'll do pink on the outside as well, or violet, sorry, pink and violet. But I'm going to flick about 1/3 of the way up with V04. Turn my hand here. There we go, about 1/3 of the way up. And then I'll also repeat that over here in this larger area. So I'm going to outline this border here. And this is just something I do to not go into the area underneath it. I like to do that little bit of outlining. And then I'm flicking a little less than half the way. And I will repeat that on all of these larger shapes. I see in the chat a question, if you use printer paper, will it not blend as well? That is correct. Printer paper, although it can work with Copic, it's just a very thin paper. And the alcohol, like, I guess the best way to put it is when you use a marker paper, it's made for layering. And a printer paper is made for printing basic text and copy. It's not meant for a lot of saturated ink. So when you use alcohol markers on printer paper, it's not going to be the best results. Even just using like a hot press watercolor paper, which is a smoother watercolor paper, that also handles alcohol markers very well. It doesn't have to be a specific marker paper. I'm going to turn my hand and flick over here. Yeah, and you're welcome, Casey. I do want to say too, I'm actually using just a basic Nina premium cardstock that I found at like Office Max or Staples. You can find at Michael's too. And a lot of places carry it. It's really great for crafting. You can use it for making cards. You can use it obviously for printing out line art. But yeah, I just use that as a go-to, and it's a great material, and it holds really well with the alcohol. If I flip this over, yeah, you can see underneath it, but it never blended onto my foam board underneath. And so far here as well, that was a mistake made earlier, but it works really well. It won't blend all the way through onto your table, so it holds well. Okay, next I'm going to use RV21. These two colors are both in the Ciao pastel set. It's a 6-piece set. So this one is going to require a little bit more layering because there's a little bit more of a value jump here. But I'm going to go over it one time, and then I will flick from inside the area with V04 and draw it out because I'm trying to reactivate those darker pigments and so they can like mingle together more, because right now they're kind of sitting side by side, but the more you layer with that lighter color, which is RV21 in this case, the more they'll start to blend, and you'll start to see more I guess smooth gradations. So that's 2 layers right there with RV21. I think I might actually do one more, and just to show this real quick. So I'm really getting some nice reactivation there with that darker color. And how long do you have to reactivate? Yeah, so let's say I was busy, I stopped coloring today, and I can't pick it up till tomorrow. You can still reactivate the color tomorrow, or a week later, or a month later. It doesn't really matter how long the colors are sitting. The alcohol pigments should still be able to reactivate and blend. It's kind of like an oil painting. If you pick up an oil painting a while later, you can still reactivate them and still mix. So it's definitely a very versatile medium in that regard. So that's 2 layers there. And I'll do one more just along that area where they kind of touch. And then I've got 2 more here on the larger shapes. So I do want to mention too, with Copic, I feel like the lighter colors are always easier to blend. And so we saw that with RV21 and Y21. They also both ended in 1, which indicates how light or dark the color is, versus I'm now trying to blend V04 with RV21. So the 1 is a lighter tone, the 4 is a mid-tone. And that's why I'm also having to do more layers here, because I have more of a jump in the value between the 2 markers. I hope that made sense. I know it can sound a little bit tricky, and when you see that there's 358 colors, it can get overwhelming. But if you want to color and like really get started with it, definitely start with the lighter colors first. Okay, now I'm going to blend out this inside area here, and then we'll move on to finish out the rest of this flower. So I'm just filling this in, super brush nib, kind of having to use a few applications of the color here. And I'm not sure if this question came up in the chat, but if you want, you can also use the 0 colorless blender to try and soften blends and transitions. I, for one, with just my own personal style of coloring, choose to use the 0 blender as a highlighting tool. But I can show that towards the end of the demo. I just want to lift this up real quick. So there we go. We've got those we still have a few kind of choppier areas here, but I can layer that a little bit later if I want to again. I'm going to do the yellows on these shapes, these larger ones over here next. And I will start again with RV21. I'm using this color a lot today so far. And underneath that leaf, starting with the darker color, just flicking it about halfway, a little less. And Y21. Go over the entire area. It's just so much easier to blend lighter colors together. I definitely feel that. And one more. Okay, so now we've got kind of a back and forth between the pink and the violet and the yellow and the red violet. So this last kind of shape on the outside, we can either pick new colors or kind of stick with the violet and red violet theme. So I'm going to actually use 2 violets, and I'm going to use, I'll show these here. Try and turn them correctly. Okay, so I'm going to use V04. This is the marker that's included in the pastel set, and then V06. So because they both start with 0, I know that they're both going to be very bright and saturated purples. And then they end in 4 and 6. That means this one's a little bit lighter, and the 6th one is a little bit darker. And so that 0, again, is just color vibrancy, how bright or bold this violet is going to be. If that number was a 9, that means it's going to have more grays in it. And so it's going to be a duller color. But these ones are very bright, very bold. And then, okay, I'll start with V06. I see it doesn't matter if one is sketch and one is Ciao. Nope, does not matter. They both have the super brush nib. So it's just the matter of the Ciao comes in 180 colors versus the full range of 358. And then the Ciao is sold at a cheaper price point because it holds less ink in the actual marker. It's just made for a more economical choice, essentially, than the sketch. And then it has less color options. But other than that, like Ciao is the marker that I bought when I was younger because it was when I was first getting started. When I got older and when I went to art school in college, I thought I needed more colors. So then I kind of had to choose the sketch. But the Ciao is great for getting started. And again, I love how they snap on the back. I know it's not really much, but I really love this feature because the sketch markers, you can't do that. So this is really nice. Okay, so what I just did there was flick about halfway up with the V06. And then I'm also going to color just the outside of this internal part of this flower. Sorry, words there. And then I'll use V04. And I'm just going to color the rest of that in. And then I will flick from inside V06 out. And I will reactivate that V06. And these will start to blend. And I know this is going to look, darker, but I kind of like that. As we're going in and out from the petal, from the inside, they start to get a little bit darker. And I like that, having things lighter in the foreground. I see a question, can I use pipsqueak markers? I'm honestly not quite sure what those are, but you probably can. I don't know if they're alcohol based or not, but any markers are fun to color with. And then Sharpies are also like an alcohol base, but they're not really blendable. I don't think they're more for like a writing tool, but you can definitely color with Sharpies too. Oil pastel is a different medium. If you use oil pastel with markers, make sure you're done using markers first and then use the oil pastel on top, because the oil pastel is like obviously an oil, so it will stick and clog and ruin your markers. So don't try and use your markers with oil pastels. Then you'll have to replace them. That's no fun. But I will lift this up, show what this looks like so far. So it's just lots of pinks and purples and a little bit of yellow in there too. And next, I'm going to start to tackle this very large flower over here. So I tried to start off with the easiest one and then move into like a more geometric flower. And the last one is this really big one where we see all of these kind of petal folds. So that's why it has like a curl with these little kind of crest shapes on the side. So we're going to tackle this. It's going to be fun, I promise. I'm going to start off with my inside area where the bulb is, and I'm going to color that with the same kind of colors I've been matching up, RV21 and Y21. So I'll start with RV21, that darker color, and flick, I don't know if that's a 1/4 inch, but just not very far, because I have this middle area is going to be yellow, and then the top I'm also going to flick a little bit, just a little bit. not much. So it's just going to kind of start like that. And then I will go from so behind this first row, there's going to be a shadow. So just from the bottom, I'm going to flick up about halfway, and then I will repeat that on that last row, flicking up about halfway. Okay, so that's it for now on this one with RV21. Next, I will choose Y21. And then I will color on top of everything. So I'm just going to fill this in. And it's going to blend really well with that RV21. We're adding just a few flicks again to soften it out. Coloring over everything. There we go. And again, the more times you layer, the deeper and richer the contrast is going to get. So just to show that here, I'm going to go back again with RV21 and just add another layer at the bottom. And these inside areas, just a little bit, like I'm basically just scribbling right now, just adding a little touch. And I'll show this. So we've got some nice blends going on there. And again, because they both end in one, both of these markers, they're going to blend super well together. So there's that internal, that inside kind of bulb shape. And next we've got all of these kind of crescent shapes going on around it. So, but the good thing is, even though it looks difficult, it is repetitive. So just like we did in these other flower shapes, once you get the first techniques down, you just have to repeat it. So with that, I'm going to start with my lighter colors, and I'm going to use V04, and then I'm going to use RV13, which is a color I haven't used yet, and then RV21. So I'm going to use 3 colors on this inside area. 2 of them, again, are included in that Ciao pastel set. So V04, start with that darker color. And I guess I'll start at the bottom here. I'm not flicking too far, but I'm kind of, since I'm going to use 3 colors, I'm going to try and split this up into thirds. So I'm going about a third of the way of each petal. And I'm just trying to stay within the lines and use the flicking technique here. So bear with me, just stay inside that area with the this first layer of petals. Let's see, and then I guess I'll just skip to this one. There we go. Okay, and then I will use RV13. So for me, this particular marker that I own happens to be Sketch. So I'll use Sketch, but again, it does not matter. These markers have the similar features. They both have this gray stripe here to indicate the super brush nib. They both have like super brush and the medium broad nibs. Again, this Ciao marker just holds less ink in the barrel. That's why it's sold at a cheaper price. And it only has 180 colors versus the full range of 358. So I just wanted to repeat that real quick. Yeah, I'll use this Sketch here with this RV13.
Right here from Lee. Lee wants to ask, what do you do about the black lines made with printer ink bleeding into your colors?
Oh, shoot. Well, I actually did print this template out. And so this is just a printout on my computer, and I'm not having any issues with bleed. But I would say maybe it's because it just came out of the printer and the ink is still fresh, not fully dried. Whenever you're using pens or any kind of black tool to outline something, it can bleed if it's not fully dried yet. So that's usually what causes, for me at least, to bleed. Maybe it's a printer, maybe it's the printer ink. I'm not sure. I'm sorry. But yeah, all I'm doing here is flicking about another third of the way down. And I'm overlapping this RV13 with the V04. So that's all I'm doing here. Flicking that color and going over V04. Kind of gotta turn my hand here to make sure I get these areas as well. Again, I'm trying to color in the shape of the petal. There we go. And you'll start to see a bit of a difference here as well. So let me show this again. So over here, I blended V04 with RV13. And over here, I did V04 with RV21. So there's a little bit more of a value jump over here because it's a lot lighter color, RV21 is. But now with RV13 kind of in the middle, it's going to soften the transition now to RV21. So just because I used a red violet that ends in 3, now that I'm using a red violet that ends in 1, it should make a smoother, more easy transition. So now I will blend this out and just finish off the petals. Are there any other questions in the chat, Nate, that you think I can address now, or?
No, looks like we're caught up unless anybody has any questions.
Okay, well, sweet. Yeah, I'm just kind of repeating this action. Again, these flowers can be quite repetitive, so there we go. Okay, so that's the inside. I've just used, when will the session end? Probably about 20 minutes. They're usually about an hour long. Yeah, so there we go. 3 different colors here. I used a violet, V04, and then RV13 and RV21. Yeah, the lines I left blank, that's a good question. I will get to that next. So those inside areas, I'll show this here. So those actually I color in with darker colors, and I will layer B23 with V as in violet 06 to make these dark colors behind it. As you can see, these flowers, gosh, these petals up here kind of go underneath. So that's where those dark values are coming from. And I just kind of repeat that over here as well, just to fill the space in. I leave these white spaces obviously white because those are in between the different petals, but that's just in kind of an easy cheat. That's just what I chose to do. It's not hyper realistic again, but I think the blending will show that you can create depth, even though it might not be 100% like realism. But with that being said, I'll leave these kind of the curls blank for now. I'll leave them white, and then I'll get to the background. So the second layer of petals. And for that, I'm going to start with blue 23, which again is in that Ciao pastel set. And I'm going to just fill that in for that first area, the first layer. Some of these areas are pretty thin, so. And then over here where it kind of opens up a bit, this is where I'll actually flick the color. So most of that space is now filled. And then I'll just keep filling in this area here. Again, I'm just trying to make it look darker. This is a personal choice. And then I will kind of flick just a little bit of this color up on each petal, because I'm going to use 3 colors again. So I'll use B23, V06, and V04. So again, I'm trying to split this up into thirds, give or take, for each petal. So I'm barely adding the blue. To each one, and then that's a big space there, but I'll leave that blank for now. And then I'll come around to the other side. And I think I want to show this area off. So debating on whether I want to finish coloring the entire thing, just looking at my time. Okay, so there is just that first layer of blue. This is B23. Next, I'll use my violet, V06, and I will do what I've kind of been doing the whole time, which is go over this area with the blue and then also flick the color up. So this is really going to create some dark areas, which is wonderful, because then it's going to really show off that front area with the bright yellow and these lighter pinks. So I always like to do this. It makes it really pop out with contrast. But the things in the foreground, I like to keep pretty light. And then as I layer, I like to get a little bit darker in the background. So I'm going over everything with B23. And I think when you first start to color with Copic, it is really nice when you kind of work in groups of 3, like I am here. I'm trying to use 3 colors for each area and break it down more, so it's not overly complex, but it still looks really nicely rendered. So there we go. Oh, the color I'm using now is V06. I saw that in the chat. And then I will use V04 to finish it off. I know my hand is blocking it now. I'm right-handed. Sorry about that.
Real quick, Shannon, what color are you using right now?
Oh, yes, V06. Gotta turn my hand. Okay, and last but not least, I will use V04. And let me try and scoot this. My swatch cards are getting off the table. But yeah, so I'm using a lot of V04, RV21. These underlying colors, again, they're in a set. You can just buy the 6 colors, Ciao pastels. And these other ones underneath I have individually. And I just chose them when this drawing to complement these colors in the set. So again, the set colors, pastels, they're wonderful. I've had them for a very long time. So V04. The nice thing about buying sets is that they're already like a curated set of colors that you know are going to look good together. It's just a matter of, do you color a lot with pastels, or is that like your typical palette? I think one of the first sets I got was the gray tones. Oh, I missed a petal right there. I need to adjust that real quick. But yeah, I think I bought these pastel tones when I was in college. So they're definitely nice because, again, you know they look good together in any kind of composition. So that's a very easy place to get started, is with sets. So adding a lot of layers here of V04 inside the areas of V06, about 2 or 3 layers. And again, I'm just trying to really soften out that space. So that's 1, and that's 2. So I'll let that breathe, let that area dry, and maybe I'll have to go back to it. I do want to say too, if you guys happen to miss the last class where I taught how to draw, if you can always print this line out line art out at like a lower opacity on your printer and practice tracing over it. If you want to learn kind of the general gist of the shapes. I know that flowers are a very common thing to color and to draw. So I know they can also be kind of tricky and intimidating with all the different symmetrical qualities some of them have. So if you want, like, feel free to trace over these. I just to like train my hand, I would try and copy like master paintings or certain pieces of art just to try and get inside the artist's head to learn more. So I definitely recommend that with this line art. Like, feel free to practice tracing over it and getting a steady hand if you really want to get better at outlining. But yeah, all of those are really good techniques to learn that. We all had to start somewhere. I wasn't this good at coloring. I wasn't born this way, so it does take some time to learn, but there we are. So we've got 3 big flowers, mostly colored. I've got these kind of crescent shapes left to color here. Very light center on the fern. Okay. Yeah, so I'll try and do some of these crescent shapes and show you guys how to blend the greens real quick. We've got about 10 minutes left. So basically what I'm going to do for these crescent shapes, I want to make the bottom parts or the side, depending on which part I am, kind of create more depth and to bring it more of that curl. So I'm going to use V04 on these ones on the inside first. Ooh, try and go quick. And I'm going to flick the color at the bottom. And as again, over here, it'll kind of be more so on the side. So depending on where we are in the actual drawing, it kind of changes the direction of the light, which means the darker parts will change just a little bit too.
Shannon, we've actually got a question. Once you're done with the edge of these petals, Catherine wants to know if you can take a look at the fern before the class is over. They're very curious about the light center of it.
Okay. Is that, I just want to make sure I get the right spot. But yeah, I'm just going to do this real quick, and maybe I won't even get to the outside ones because I do want to make sure I touch up on everything. But I just wanted to show how to color the curls too. So there we go. That was V04. And now I'll use RV13 and just go over that entire area and soften that. And this will look darker, but that's a good thing. We do want it to stand out. It makes these RV21 areas really stand out because they're lighter. I'm all about that contrast. There we go. Very quickly adding this in. A few layers. Okay, there we go. There we go. Okay, so I just want to show this again. That is kind of how I colored the curl parts of this inside shape, which I think this is coming along pretty darn good. And then on the outside areas, I'll repeat it if you want with B23 and V06. So that way the V04 underneath will also stand out more. So that's what I'll do there. Now I'm going to tackle, because I've got some time, I'm just going to tackle the greenery. So on this example over here, I used some pretty dark colors. So I was using BG18, BG15, and then YG13. And then I also used in the lighter areas YG11. So I'm using some greens and some blue greens to kind of color in that area. And I have a partially colored in drawing off to the side here where I followed a little bit different idea with BG15, YG13, and YG11. And as you can see over here, it's very partially done, but all I did in this area is establish the darker parts of the leaf. So underneath here, this flower, there's going to be a little bit of a shadow. So that's why BG15 is there. And also here. And then these areas are just BG15 with YG13 layered on top of it. So that's what I'll kind of do here to show off, and this shape here. So I'll try and tackle that real quick. But I'll start over here on these kind of bottom leaves, and I'll grab BG15, and all I'm doing here is establishing the shadow point. So I'm trying to, I might have to turn my page actually. Flick in the color in the direction of the shape. I'll add just a little bit down there. So again, just a little bit of kind of establishing where that light and dark area is. So there we go. And down here, it's going to be pretty dark. So I might actually just shade most of that in. And then over here, with that lower area. Okay, so it kind of looks a little choppy right now, but bear with me. Just adding in those areas where the shadows are. There we go. And then I'll also do that here on this flower stem, and then a little bit on top of where the bow is and underneath, as well as at the bottom. So there we go. And then I will use YG13. So this is a color I haven't used yet, but this is a YG13. And I will work from inside the area with BG15 and cover the entire thing, because this will start to activate with that blue-green. And when you layer it on top of the blue-green 15, it starts to turn more green, obviously, because we're adding more green to it, but the blueness part starts to go away more. And you might have to layer it a few times to soften it some more. And I'm flicking in that area, really trying to activate it. I'm quite literally just very saturating the area. I'm just trying to add a lot of layers to make sure it's blended. Again, I don't really have a bleed through problem. There might be some, no, nothing bled through, but there we go. And I'll just try and finish these real quick, because they're larger areas. So adding in that color very smoothly. I kind of tilted my marker to the side there to fill that in quick. There we go. And then I can repeat the same steps here at the stem, or I'm going to try my best to leave a little bit of white space to put YG11, which is our lightest green. So adding a lot of layers here, really saturating it in. And I just want to show this transition. But there we go, YG11, very light. But it's going to stand out a bit too, create a nice central highlight. So there we go. Let me show this. So there's our leaves. I use BG15, YG13, and then YG11. So there we go. Sometimes I see someone said theirs isn't blending very well. Sometimes it's not blending because you need to add a few more layers. Like I just added maybe 1, 2, or 3 layers of YG13 on top because there was a little bit of a color difference or a value difference. So sometimes you just need to add more layers, or it could be the paper that you're using too. I kid you not, the paper quality does make a big difference. So that might also be why it's not blending as well. I see someone also said they want to see the smaller flowers. So I can show these little ones up here really quick, and I'll use some blues because we haven't used a ton of blues yet, but I'll use blue 23, and I'm going to outline the center bulb area. and then flick a little bit of color, a little less than halfway. And I'll repeat that for all 3 of these little shapes here. Like, I like to outline it again. I'm just trying to preserve that central area. Because knowing me, I would not see it, or my hand would block it and I would just color right over it. I hate when that happens. And then I'll take another blue, B12, super brush nib, best friend, and I will flick it from inside and kind of draw out that color. And again, it's going to take a few applications. There's quite a bit of a value jump between these 2 colors. So it might take a few layers. Don't be afraid of that. But I will just repeat that over here. And for these ones, because they're small, I am just using 2 colors. Whereas everywhere else, I was trying to use 2 or 3 because the shapes themselves were larger. But it's hard to color small areas with a lot of different colors. So again, I'm flicking out from inside of the area with B23 and applying a few rounds of this B12 color. There we go. And then my personal preference, I like to pair the yellow with the blues. And then I will put Y21 in the middle. And you can leave it at that, or maybe if you want to use a darker yellow, this is Y35. I'm just going to kind of just go around the circumference of that circle. And that's it. So I'll show that as well. Those are the little flowers. I just used 2 blues. Yes, B and B23 stands for blue. That is 100% true. The V in V04 stands for violet. BG stands for blue-green. YG stands for yellow-green. If you go to our website, copic.2.com, there's a color wheel there that you can see, and it's very comprehensive. It shows you, the color wheel and 358 colors and explains it as well. So, but everything that Copic has in their numbering system is comprehensive. So, like I was explaining earlier, the 1 at the end, I'll use RV21. This 1 indicates how light or dark the color is. The 2 indicates how bright or dull the color is. So this is a 2, that means it's a pretty bright saturated pink. If this was a 9, it would be a gray down kind of dull color. And the RV stands for red violet, which basically translates to pink. So there we go. Nate, can you put the web address in there for me? On the chat. But yes, I'm trying to figure out if there's anything else that you guys wanted to see really quick. But the leaf shapes, again, when you use kind of the blue-green and the blues and mix it with the green, you can create a lot of really good vibrancies down here. Oh, highlight with the blender pen. Thank you, Jen. Okay, forgot about that. So yes, this is a Ciao Zero blender, and the sketch marker of this version looks very similar, but basically it has, some blending qualities. And oh, the buds, I want to see the buds. Okay, I'll do that too. But what I want to show is just like different highlight techniques. So if you want, you can make like lines, and I'm going to use this shape up here since it's darker. But yes, it's been an hour. Thank you guys for coming. I'm just going to draw some lines, maybe like 2 very light lines. And this is going to create like a little vein, kind of a highlight here. So there we go. You can see a little bit of lines right there. And then I can repeat that to create just highlights. So basically, I like to use it for detailing like this. However, I'll show this off to the side. Let me choose a darker color, like B23, sure. So I'm going to just color a little swatch here with B23. And now I will use Zero blender and saturate the paper. Obviously there's no color here, it's just alcohol. And then I'll put B23 on top of it. And this is typically what people use the zero blender for. So this is just B23 out of the tube, like out of the marker. That's zero blender first applied to the paper and then B23 on top. So notice it's a little fuzzier, it's a little bit lighter, and that's usually what people use it for, is to make colors lighter before they apply them to the paper. However, I was using it over here to make some little highlights. So the alcohol ink is basically just trying to like make a color lighter or push the ink away. So this is what we're doing here. We're kind of pushing away the other pigments that are around it. And that's what I like to use the zero blender for. But the blender pen, wonderful tool. I use it all the time, again, for detailing, but it's a really great thing, especially say, if you go outside the lines on something, it's not going to be an eraser, but you can try and like push, I'll go with this one. You can try and push the color in and like get it to kind of move for you. It's almost like water in a watercolor painting. But yeah, you can try and see like that border is now hazy. I tried to push that color in more. But yeah, that's the zero blender for you. And, you know, I can keep adding some lines here. You know, a few applications of the alcohol will really start to make it highlighted. But that is the zero blender. And then I think somebody said they wanted to see the little buds. So depending on what colors you want, you can use 2 colors here or 3, but they're pretty small. So I think I might just do 2 colors. And I'll show with the, let's see, the B23, and let's do RV13. Why not? Kind of different colors. So I'll start with that darker one and flick at the bottom. Because I do kind of want to use this as an example of blending odd colors, like a blue and a pink, you know, kind of unconventional. So now I'll work from inside the area with B23 and I'll flick it out. And this creates a pretty nice purple. So again, I go over the entire area with blue, probably 2 or 3 times, since they are very different colors. And I've got that little highlight in the middle there. So I might just use RV21 and really scribble that in. Those 2 times. So yeah, there is quite a value jump here. So you kind of repeat it as many times as you see fit.
Shannon, quick question from Nancy. What can you do with the other end of these markers? We've been using the super brush nib this whole time, but can you show them the broad tip?
Yeah, sure. So let me go with a dark color. Yeah, so this is the sketch marker and this is the Ciao. So over here is the medium broad nib, and this one is a very stiff nib. I love this nib for like any kind of detailing or writing or precision. So I'll just show it here. That is our medium broad nib. And what you can use is this part of try and go over this white space. You can use this part, you can use this top area, you can use this flat area here, or obviously the broad part. So I can use the top, very smooth, consistent line. I can use the side. I can use it for dots or detailing like that. This corner here is the skinniest one. Or I can use the edge of this. So basically I use it for mark making and for detailing. And so you can use a lot of different techniques with the medium broad nib. For coloring things like flowers that are organic, I like to use the super brush because it's more flexible. But the medium broad nib is great for all of these kind of detailings. So for example, maybe I wanted to add some dots here at the top. I would most likely choose the medium broad side because it's a stiff nib and it's consistent. So I can add dots and they're always going to look the exact same, versus if I flip it to the, super brush, I can try and make them to look the exact same, but depending on like my pressure point, how hard I press down on the paper, it can vary. So if you're looking for 100% accuracy, I would choose the medium broad side. So I hope that helped out there. And with the medium broad, I love to layer. So you can create a lot of, like for fashion illustration, I see this a lot with plaid patterns and other types of design where they're layering it to get, you know, a certain consistency. And then you can obviously see when I layer this color twice, it's a lot darker. So things start to look a little bit more obvious with the medium broad side as well. And when you refill, that's the side that I usually pull out of the marker because it's stiff and I won't damage it with tweezers, essentially. So when you need to refill and you have to clamp down tweezers onto something, this usually will never get damaged. Whereas the super brush nib is more moppy and flexible. If you clamp tweezers onto it really hard, you might damage it. So when you refill your markers, usually I like to refill from the other side too. I didn't have time to do the bow. If you want to stay and see the bow, I can try and do that really quickly. But essentially, I can just repeat that with the pinks. So maybe I'll use kind of like working from the top and bottom, from the inside area where that shadow comes out. I'm doing this so fast. But basically, start with your dark areas first. Establishing those shadow points will always help you more. And then working to your next color and softening it out. Making sure that you have like the light source established. So I'm trying to work underneath here. And thank you guys so much for coming too. I know I've ran over my time, but I really hope this helped a lot. And then I'll just go in with RV21 and really try and soften this. I think the pink colors that I'm using today are my kind of go-to here. So you could have done any other colors for this, but essentially color that really quickly. So I should blend that out more, but I established like the darker points. And I tried to blend that out with the mid-tone in a lighter color. But when you have that kind of shadow point established, it makes it a lot easier to blend those transitions out. So thank you guys so much. And I think that's about it. Did I miss this, Fern? I'm so sorry. Well, we kind of ran over a bit, but all you need to do here for the Fern is just use, I would say BG15, YG13, and YG11. So I would use these three colors here. And all I would do is just go from the inside where it's darkest and work your way out. Same steps that we used for these petals, you know, the darker, mid-tone, light, and you just repeat that for every single one. But that's pretty much all you need to do. Just choose your 2 or 3 colors, dark, medium, and light, and then repeat it. So yeah, I think that's it. I just don't want to go too far over the hour. But yeah, Nate, anything else?
I think that's it.
I think, thank you guys. Thank you, Nancy. I wanted to put in the website. It's copic.2.com is our company website. But yeah, and then, oh, I forgot to add this. Yes. This is my, trying to put my spotlight on my overhead view. But yeah, make it with Michaels, hashtag us, hashtag Copic with us. Michael's stores, we are on Instagram at Copic Official US. And then my own personal Instagram is Shannon Brouk. My last name is spelled weird, so it's BROUK. Oh, I see a Shannon in the chat. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you so much. And I hope you guys learned a lot today. And this will be recorded. So again, feel free to rewatch the video later. And we will have more Copic classes coming up. So thank you guys. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks for coming, everybody.